Hi, I'm Mark Fischer, candidate for the Pennsylvania House of Representatives in District 50. This is Mark and Sam on the back porch. And if you have any thoughts, comments, questions, please go to my website, www.markwfischer.com. Fischer is spelled F-I-S-C-H-E-R.
And welcome back to Mark and Sam on the back porch. We're going to talk about some issues that you wanted to know a little bit more about and know how Mark Fischer felt about those issues. Mark, the first one we're going to start with, small games a chance.
Wow, and that's a big one.
It is a big one.
I knew it was a problem, but lately the amount of questions and comments from clubs, club leadership, things like that, this is really a big mess.
Right.
And I think we've got to talk about it. And I want to explain it a little bit historical, and then I want to talk about my philosophy on this. But we had a small games of chance piece of legislation from the 80s. The legislature took it to revise it this last year, and they enacted a very complex piece of legislation with burdensome reporting requirements on clubs. And when we talk about clubs, you know, this is your VFWs, your fraternal lodges, your sportsmen's clubs in this area. They're really fired up, and so on. But really, any organization that raises money is affected by this legislation. So the requirements are that they report, some of them weekly, based on the amount. It has extremely low thresholds for reporting, too, for the money they raise. It puts more burdens on these small clubs than casinos for reporting. The thresholds are lower.
Right.
Well, that tells you something right there about why this legislation was passed and who stands to benefit. The other part of this is that it restricts the split of the funds that they raise, which is completely counterproductive here. These organizations, you know, you've got one of the Sportsmen's Club had different categories. They expressed to me that when they raise money, they put the money in, you know, and now they have to donate to charity if they don't fit as a charity. You know, now volunteer fire departments were actually exempt from that provision, so everything they raise can stay within their organizations, but they still have the reporting requirements. Right. And if you haven't looked at this, you know, Google Pennsylvania Small Games a Chance. Take a look. This is a mess. It goes into effect for the large part in February of next year. So when the legislature goes back in January, we've only got a limited amount of time to either fix this or do something else. Now that's where I come in. Right. Okay. I don't think fixing this in that time frame is an option. I had somebody, he's not a lobbyist, but he's a higher level person with one of these organizations, come to me and say, look, we've got legislators that are thinking about introducing this. And I took a look at it, and all it does is raise the reporting threshold by about $5,000, okay, on an event. So you do a gun bash, it makes no difference. You know what I'm saying? So, and I said to the gentleman, I was real nice with him, but I said, look, we need to think a little differently about what we're doing here. Because do we need the heavy hand of the state of Pennsylvania reaching into these organizations and affecting them? With volunteer fire departments, I've been absolutely angry about it. If Pennsylvania wants to step into this, great. You know what? Hire firefighters and put them in these firehouses. That's right. You know, if you don't want these men and women out there raising their own money, then you pay for it and see how far that gets you. Exactly. You know, obviously I'm being facetious, and it aggravates me though that they would be so arrogant as to say we're going to step in here and do something. You know, that doesn't, in my opinion, need to be done. No. I don't see the benefit here, and it goes on to these other organizations that may not be a charitable organization, because to get that designation requires a lot of work and a lot of actions and expense. But what they are, they're organizations that serve the public interest here. You know, you've got lots of people that belong to these clubs. Sure you do. And they like it. Right. And we do not need government stepping in and hounding them. I think what needs to happen, my plan of action, should I be fortunate enough to get to Harrisburg in January, is going to be to try to get lawmakers together to put a hold on the enactment of this legislation. Okay. You know, basically stop this process now. Right. Then go back to the 1980s legislation, take a look at what's real, what isn't, and fix it step by step.
Exactly.
Yes, take our time and do it right.
Right.
And most importantly, I've told the clubs out there, and I stand by this, that they must become involved in this process if the legislators won't go to them. And I would have come back and talked to these groups and said, hey, this is what's being proposed. What do you think here?
Yeah, give me your opinion on it.
What's this going to do?
Sure.
Well, that didn't happen. Obviously, we didn't have representation when this occurred. Okay.
Very good
or at least
point.
for the large part of it.
Sure.
And that's a problem. But I have told them to get active in an organized fashion across the state.
Right.
We need to have a whole approach to this. That they're putting pressure to representatives all over, not just here,
right.
Everywhere.
Right.
And I think then we can get them to yield a bit to this pressure. The other part of this that may not be obvious to everybody is if you have stringent reporting requirements, regulatory requirements, things you have to do, there has to be an employee at the state government level that deals with this.
Right.
Or a couple of hundred, or who knows with this kind of legislation.
Right.
Nobody thought about, okay, what do we have to do here? Or they thought about it and liked what they were going to see.
Created legislation without thinking about the impacts of it?
Go figure.
I can't believe
Go
that.
figure. And, well, the point of this video, what I want to get to the clubs, I've talked to a lot of them. I've been to a lot of these clubs and been beaten around with this. And my answer, when you're telling the truth, your answer is always the same. It's pretty easy. This is exactly the kind of thing that I oppose. More intrusions that don't have a good basis for being done. I mean, do we really need this? Is this going to make a difference to anybody? Now, what you've got here is you've got probably a sampling of problems around the state that have occurred, and you've got legislators overreacting, creating massive burdens on these groups that grow government, that destroy some of these organizations. And it's a sledgehammer solution to something you could have done with a pair of tweezers. Honestly. So this has to stop. If I get to Harrisburg in January, I'm going to be very vocal about this, and I will help. I spoke before about how I reach these kind of groups. It's the same with the township supervisors and some of the other organizations here. You do it by creating some type of working group or whatever you want to call it, but the point is it's an opportunity for the representative to get together with these groups, tell them what's going on, take their feedback, and go back to Harrisburg and try to make it work. And I'll do that. I stand by that. I've said it all along, and this is an extension of it.
Well, you heard it from Mark Fischer, talking about small games a chance, but more importantly, he wants to hear what you have to say because he understands that he would be your representative. This is Mark and Sam on the Back Porch. Stay tuned. We've got a lot more.